set auto-destruct sequence.
It's the time allotted that concerns me.
Recognize Picard, Jean-Luc, Captain. Recognize Riker, William T, Commander.
Maximum warp!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Warp Core Podcast. I'm UrzaMaster. Joining me, as always, Lord Uther and Fert Derby from the great Q Continuum Beyond. And we are exploring Strange New Worlds today. Rolling back to the 2025 series that just launched. And if you haven't seen this Season 3 yet, go out to our archives, make sure you're subscribed, check out our coverage of all of the episodes of Strange New World Season 3 to date. These are fantastic Star Trek episodes. You will not regret it. Make sure you're a subscriber both to us and Paramount Plus so you don't miss a word going forward. Today we are talking through the lens of time. If you caught this on the broadcast, lens misspelled on Paramount Plus. So there are mistakes in the future. Bum, bum, bum. But that's okay because this episode was not a mistake. As a matter of fact, it was fantastic. But Fert Derby, take us through the lens of time.
Hi, everybody. We are in Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 3, through the lens of time, whatever your preferred spelling. It is directed by Andy Armaginian, and Andy previously directed a Season 1 Strange New Worlds, Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach. As you recall, that's when Christopher Pike and the crew encountered a society that wanted to sacrifice children, and the Enterprise objected on moral, spiritual, and plot grounds. So that was Andy. Our writers have worked on Strange New Worlds throughout its run, but they've just done great recent work. Onitra Johnson and Davy Perez are the credited writers. We just saw Onitra's work on Shuttle to Kenfori, which was the Klingons are chasing us on a planet infested with moss zombies. And Davy Perez, of course, got a co-story credit and wrote the episode Hegemony Part 2, the exciting conclusion to the Season 2 cliffhanger. So they've already given us and graced us with good work, and here we have another one. We have Alien Prison Planet with quantum twists in terms of all of that, a little bit of bloodletting in order to make it all work. The first 5 minutes or so puts us firmly back in the quartet of Chapel, Corby, Spock, Lon. And I have in my notes here, Chapel makes it weird, because it seems like even though she and her archaeologist hunk are getting along just great, she's still worried, looking out for Spock. And I love when they beam down to the world, to the archaeological site, and Corby's already down there, and Spock and Chapel and Lon all beam down. Spock just brushes by him like, yeah, whatever. And I think he even mentions in the episode, someone says, but you're friendly now. And he's like, that's a relative term. So playing it Vulcan cool, but you can still get the sense of, hey, back off, bro. We're not exactly Facebook friendly. We have Captain Batal still being treated for her Gorn DNA, and that becomes a plot point later. So again, it's a somewhat serialized approach, because you need to know what these storylines are about, I think, to fully appreciate what they're showing you. I don't think it's necessarily essential. You could drop in on this episode, and just kind of go with what they're giving us. But it just makes all of those interactions and brief moments all the more richer. I think we talked on the Warp Core about how we thought the Christine Spock storyline might now go to the back burner and be left on simmer. And that's exactly what this is. It's just enough to remind you of where they are emotionally in connection to each other. But the episode itself is not built around that. necessarily. And it just sort of gives you a nice shadings for some of their dialogue and interactions later on. We also have the documentary filmmaker Umberto Ortegas, who of course is the brother to Erica Ortegas on the bridge, who's suffering her own PTSD from the Gorn. And he's got a thing with Uhura, and she's not exactly shy of saying, yep, I like what you're putting down, I'm picking it up. So it's cute to see those two sort of shamelessly flirting. At one point, it might be, maybe it was Chapel, I think, instead of Lon. It was like, everything okay over there, Lieutenant? Oh, yes, my work's finished now. But she was taking time off from setting up the refractors to make cute smiles at Umberto. And as a documentary film crew, etc., it allows you to get, a little bit of exposition in there cleverly, and a little bit of, an extra perspective in certain scenes and so forth. A little found footage for fans of the Blair Witch Project and every horror movie from 1999 to 2008. We had real outdoor locations. In addition to our bridge sets and everything else, and engineering and sickbay, we had, honest to God, we went out somewhere and shot the alien planet, and that was great. The interior of the prison, the temple, the archaeological site, I was getting a Hobbit Battle of Five Armies vibe. Like just the imagery that they were using, and the vastness of it and the cold lighting of it. I don't know why. It had a little Peter Jackson for me when I saw it. Our fight choreography has much improved since the original series, when you witness Ensign Gamble and Captain Battelle mixing it up in sickbay. And this isn't even an acolyte lightsaber battle that was, drop dead. Like, oh, I've never seen that kind of fighting before. I mean, this is stunt people going at it, but going at it with brutality, and furniture's getting overturned and things are getting smashed, and fisticuffs and kicks, and it's far refreshing from maybe some of the early Shatner wrestlings and clasping of fists onto shoulders. Yes. I had a Lord Uther moment when they had to cross a bridge into the unknown to get to point A to B. That gave me a Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I mean, there couldn't be any other homage that it was trying to do except that particular film. And that particular film has a special place, as Lord Uther and I skipped school 30 plus years ago to go see that movie on its opening day. And I know UrzaMaster will mention Carol Kane and basically all the crew. I think I want to finish, though, gentlemen. My thought was, I'm not a prude when it comes to violence. I've been a horror movie fan for decades. And I've seen a lot. And I've seen a lot on the big screen, and I've seen it on network, or not necessarily network, but I've seen it in cable. I've seen The Walking Dead. I've seen Game of Thrones. I've seen Rome. Violence does not bother me. So it's not necessarily, maybe some extreme violence, maybe those Eli Roth films, Hostel, or maybe some of the later installments of the Saw franchise might have gotten a little too much. But overall, it is what it is, and I recognize it, and I can appreciate it. However, it was still somewhat jarring, given where this franchise began with Gene Roddenberry in the late 60s, and then all through the Berman-verse, and now. It was a little jarring to see sort of the graphic gore attributed with what happens to Ensign Gamble and his eye sockets. If you were a 7 or 8 year old who was enjoying Star Trek with your parents, or you just happened to come home after school and turn it on the streamer, I don't know. I mean, maybe, like I say, we've become more desensitized to it thanks to Walking Dead and Last of Us. Maybe on-screen violence in the 80s and late 70s and so forth is obviously it's escalated. It's obviously computer-generated effects for the most part with a touch of makeup. But I remember writing a screenplay in the early 90s that had a similar act of violence in which someone's orbital sockets were violently and gutted and so forth, and I was describing it. And I know for a fact that would have garnered an R rating in any context had that ever made it to the big screen. So I was just a little bit, I wasn't disappointed, I wasn't shocked, I wasn't like, oh my God. I was just a little bit like, I'm kind of a little bit surprised that they're showing that. Like, we never would have seen that in the Berman-verse. And I think it works because it gives him that alien, unsettling, scary personage for this new potential big bad that we have, the Vezda, which I hope we'll be talking more about in the future. But yeah, the level of violence with Ensign Gamble, like I said, that threw me for a second. It did not detract from the episode. I appreciated it, but I was just like, this is not very family friendly. This is more TV-14, if you know what I mean. Gentlemen?
I couldn't agree more. Again, didn't bother me, but it was kind of like hearing the F-bomb on Picard. It was jarring. I was like, wow, I would not have expected that. And it wasn't a wasted moment on Picard, and it isn't a wasted moment here. I think if they are setting up the Vezda as a future big bad, this is the way to do it. It does kind of make me wonder a little bit if the Vezda might have any relation to the Black Tar monster from Next Generation. Because, Pelia describes them as like pure evil, which, cool.
If they do, they're the hero because they get rid of Tasha Yar. Anyway,
exactly. In which case, it's like, I think we misjudged the Vezda. But I think it's always interesting to see a Star Trek Doctor fail.
Right.
And when Mbenga can't restore, Gamble's eyes, it's like that's a big deal. And I think what we get is a little bit like we've been talking Next Generation, of course. We get kind of a mirror of Next Gen to pre-TOS, doctoring, right? I feel like Beverly Crusher, somebody walks into sickbay, and unless they're a Klingon, they probably are going to make it. And, in this case, every time that Mbenga or one of the doctors gets involved in this series, it seems like, wow, they're really challenged, despite all of the forward technologies and medicines and techniques that they have. He's struggling to save his daughter's life. He's struggling to save Captain Batel. He's struggling to save, Gamble here, and then of course finds out that Gamble's already gone. But then the flip side to that is Batel, who we feel like is going through this huge upheaval in her own journey, is like, well, it's a good thing because she seems to know what's up. So I found it very interesting, and the scope of this like archaeological dig, it makes me kind of wish that Vash would have had this with Picard a little bit. Like, God, if we could have got those big sweeping, same type of scope as like a Battle of the Five Armies, going into the caves of Moria or something, that would have been so awesome. So it's good to see a little bit here. I like that we're getting a little bit more of Corby. I was really intrigued by his character in TOS, and kind of like a Harry Mudd. Like, I wanted more, and I'm really still hoping we get some Harry Mudd in Strange New Worlds at some point. At least on like an early Harry Mudd level, but I don't know, this did have a little element of horror to it, and I think it was balanced well against the Uhura flirtation and some of what's going on the ship. It's just a good balanced episode. I mean, it really, if this is what kicks off the new big bad, and I don't know necessarily that it's going to be, but I think it has a high potential, high ceiling. You gotta aim pretty far to get past the Gorn. I mean, they've set up the Gorn as so scary at this point that what could be scarier than these lizard beings that are seemingly unstoppable and have this incredible grasp over technology and biology. It's very interesting.
Am I correct here that the Vezda and the Gorn are enemies?
That's what it feels like. Yes.
Okay, so you picked up that vibe too, which makes me wonder. Starfleet can have to. I mean, are they going to have the Gorn help them against the Vezda? I don't. I mean, where are they going with this?
I think that's a road that is suggestible. I don't think you can just instantly say, "Quick, let's team up with the Gorn." But I think that's definitely, yeah,
Batel is the link between the Gorn and Starfleet now.
right.
But then again, Kirk's gonna fight the Gorn later.
Well,
but the enemy of the enemy is my friend.
Right. No,
What was that, Aaron?
I know. I love what you're doing with that thought process there. But I will say that I don't know if any final decisions have been made, but that last shot of the monitor, briefly giving us a Vezda life reading, I think they're winking to us to say we want to do more. But as to what it evaluates at, we'll have to see. But they clearly were like, don't sleep on these guys.
Well, because you could always put them in your back pocket.
Right.
I even thought, when I said one of my theories was, we're going to see the Vezda in like now, like present day is wrong, but maybe sometime in the Starfleet Academy time or afterwards, because they've been around forever kind of thing. So I thought maybe they were setting them up as a future baddie, which I guess that could be done because we really don't hear about them. Well, we never hear about them in TOS or Next Generation or DS9. So curious as to what they're going to do there. I get maybe that's part of the problem with the prequels. You can't establish new baddies because we should have heard about them, but there's always a way around that, right? But yeah, maybe Batel is the link between the Gorn and the humans. Anyway, great episode. I love the tension with Spock and Chapel, which also leads you to TOS with Chapel still expressing those feelings for Spock. So we know those feelings really, truly never have gone away, right? So I think that's important. I like the whole... To me, I had more of a Alien Prometheus vibe while watching this.
Yes.
I think that was kind of evident, too. Like I told you guys in chat, I love the show. I don't know of a weak point. I've read some stuff on the internets of a little bit of complaining here and there, but I think that's people just complaining so they can try to be relevant instead of just saying, hey, you know what? The show gets better and better and better. There's not been a weak spot, and we even have an episode coming up with a whole bunch of Muppet characters. And how are they going to do that? But then again, they did a whole musical episode, and it was fantastic. I don't know if I read this correctly either. I thought season 4 was only going to have 6 episodes, but I'm reading 10. So I don't know how accurate that is either because... Go ahead.
The season 5, which will be their final season, will be an abbreviated six episode season. Season 4, I believe, which was ordered before season 3 aired, that should be a full complement of 10, as far as I know.
Because you got to start killing some of these characters off. It's got to happen at some point, or they've got to be transferred off the ship. You got to start right. Man, I'm just so interested. My biggest question is, even though I've been reading about this a little bit online again, but how accurate is that? I just hope they spin this into a TOS and they keep going with this crew. That is my hope of hopes, because again, I buy into them every single week. There's just not a weak link. There's not.
And how many shows have you gentlemen, we've watched some quality TV over the years. How many shows do you know that could successfully, with the same characters and the same fan base and the same universe, could do something like Space Adventure Hour, and then literally the next week we get Through the Lens of Time, keeping in mind that a couple of episodes before that we had Wedding Bell Blues, and then Shuttle to Confori, and like the balance between sort of the absurd and the lighter and the more romantic episodes, contrasty with the very tension-filled whatever. I will say that I thought the horror elements, ironically, play in this one, and I love your Prometheus reference. That's absolutely with the pricking of the fingers and all of that ancient technology. I I think this one did horror better for me than a little bit of Shuttle to Conforti, just because of my knee-jerk reaction to, oh, here we go again with the undead. And that's my obstacle, and I have to get over it in that particular setting. But I thought this one was a stone cold chiller, and I would have even loved to see more of Evil Gamble, you know, beyond just the fight scene with Battelle and then attempting to take over the engineering and so forth. Because I mean, you've got this eyeless. First of all, you have a character that inherently has been presented as likable, if albeit a little thin, and then he finally gets to go on an away mission, and you know. And it's like, you know, of course, what does he do? He picks up the glowy thing. You're never supposed to pick up the glowy thing. Lon should have been like, put that down. You know, she's like a step short. And then it goes just like an alien egg unfolding, you know, on planet LV-426. And I mean, he pays the price for it. And thankfully, here's a show that's not afraid to say, you know what, you guys thought this might be a good supporting character, maybe he'd be on the, you know, sick bay for a couple of seasons. Nope. You know, he's gone. And like,
That's exactly how I felt, yeah.
Right. And we can't save him. I love Ursa pointing that out. Like they run up to their own limits, I guess, even with technology, because it's just easy to say, here, give them a hypo shot. Oh, look, they're cured. And so when M'Benga realizes there's no brain activity, like basically that he's dead and he's just an animated meat puppet, like that's chilling. And then he's able to punch through a force field and able to alternate and sort of as a ventriloquist use Gamble's, you know, innocence guard. Come here. So yes, I think Vezda, I hope those are 5 letters that we see more of. And UrzaMaster we were marveling on Carol Kane. I love, you know, a very tense exposition scene, pure evil, and you know, doing Kyle Reese from the Terminator. It won't stop it, you know. And she does all of this, and then she looks over to Umberto. Do you need one for the camera? And Pike just kind of looks at it, and Pike's reluctance to even entertain this whole documentary thing. He's just kind of like, yeah, just don't speak, stay over there in the corner, and the sort of exasperation as a leader, like he's polite, but he's not. He's just like, yeah, okay, fine, we're doing this, but I don't want to. I love that for him.
It's great. I mean, I'm not a big fan of horror, so for me, it was like a little challenging getting through, but it really, the balance is just amazing with those little moments that break up the tension just enough and also drive your intrigue into the story. It just, I mean, they just keep nailing it. I don't know what else to say. Like, I don't know how a show can take such risks and have only minimal quibbles. Although the musical episode, I will say that Klingon rap scene should never have made it because it was bad. But it was supposed to be bad, so I guess it worked out. Yeah, this episode just so good. I am going to hop right to my warp core and venture this as a 7. To me, this is a perfect episode, engaging all parts of the cast of characters and giving us perfect balance, a good, creepy, high-stakes situation that didn't feel forced and felt very authentic and organic. And I think it gives us the resilience of the crew, which is going to make the eventual, someone's going to get knocked off. Those eventual things are going to be that much harder to take. And when something can pack that much of an emotional gut punch, you know you've created a series that's going to last and stand the test of time. And that is what Star Trek is all about.
Yeah, I'm going to go... I'm going to go 6.5, and it's just the only reason why. I didn't like the whole documentary thing. I don't know why. I felt like it was going to turn into an episode of The Office for a second there. I mean, I get the purpose of it. I felt like they're doing that just to keep that character relevant or keep him around kind of thing, to give Uhura a little bit of a love interest. which that's a whole other thing. I don't know why you always need a love interest for everybody, but whatever. We can put that to the side for now. That's an overall show trope, right? That people are even Picard and Crusher, like we were seeing it there, right? Or is that something that does happen amongst leadership? Because I don't know about you, but it got a CEO fired at a Coldplay concert, right? So we need to be careful with that. But maybe that's a common thing that happens. I don't know, because you work so closely together. Anyway, 6.5, which tells you something, because the show is just so amazing that I have to knock it down a little bit because I didn't like the documentary piece. But yeah, and all these characters just have such a uniqueness about them. I mean, Pelia, the heebie-jeebies, like the way she talks, it's just so unique. And I love that Spock is making some mistakes at times, or reading situations incorrectly, or showing, like, we're seeing some emotion when he's supposed to be emotionless, in a sense. Like we see him so well that we can still like see those things happening. And I love that Montgomery Scott is still figuring some stuff out. That's just why this series is so powerful, and it's under the tutelage of Pike. And I hope that is brought up again at some point, that we're seeing these characters in their infancy, and Pike gets them to the point that they're an experienced crew with Kirk, which makes TOS and the Enterprise that even more powerful, because they didn't get all out of that from Kirk. We're seeing them learn this under Pike. I think that's a big deal. Especially if you ever go to rank captains one day, you've got to kind of ask that question. You know, where is Pike when he gets this crew to that point?
Just because I don't like to give out the sevens every week, I think I'm going to go with Lord Uther and go 6.5. I didn't have no notes as far as the episode goes, but I do want to leave wiggle room in case there's something so transcendent, so just beyond Star Trek Beyond, that see what I did there. I want to leave a little wiggle room there, but I have no arguments with Urza. I mean, this was fantastic television, up and down, and isn't it funny, right? I mean, like Picard, which, you know, had a transcendent season 3, had Q in season 2, had adult elements engineered in season 1 along with Riker and Troy. Like, there were episodes of Picard, especially in the first couple of seasons, that they didn't quite, you know, land in on the perfect side, but they also weren't, you know, like, oh my God, I can't believe they let that air. But this show really, the batting average is high, and I just fear that if it swings and misses, I don't know what that's going to feel like, because I'm just not seeing it in this third season at all, really, even with minor quibbles aside. And like I say, like, it's like a baseball player. You're not going to hit home runs, you know, every time up. You'd be lucky if you were able to get on base, you know, a walk, maybe a down the line single, infield single. So I hope they just keep, like you say, taking those swings and aiming large and small, because yeah, it's one of the more fun shows on television right now, right? Isn't that what it is? Fun. You turn it off and you just feel a little bit better. You know, had a bad day at work, you feel better.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, there's not a wasted episode.
Right.
There hasn't been. And I think that's I think that's what we love so much about season 3 of Picard, is not only did it bring all those things together for us and it kept a lot of cheese out of it, there wasn't a wasted episode where, again, to your point, season 1 and 2, I could have gone with or without season 1 or 2 and just taken season 3. That could have just been Picard. And here I am. I want to see every single... Like, I was looking back real quick at some notes, and I was from Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and I completely forgot about Hemmer. He was such a great character.
Oh
He was
my
a great
gosh,
character.
yes.
and he's gone.
Yeah.
But he left a great impact, and I think that's what this show does. I'm never gonna forget Mbenga. He has been a phenomenal character, phenomenal, because they don't waste any time with any of these characters in any show.
And neither do we here at the Warp Core Podcast on Pending Rebrand. Hit that subscribe button for us. Drop us a comment. What did you think? What do you think about Strange New Worlds? Is it the best Star Trek series on television right now? Or are you excited for Starfleet Academy, which is coming very soon? We will also cover that here on the Warp Core Podcast. And the only way not to miss it is hit that subscribe button now. Make sure you share us to all your Star Trek fans that you know, because we aren't stopping. We aren't slowing down. We are on this mission with this gallant crew and all of the gallant crews of the Starship Enterprise and others. And until we get to that next phase of Starfleet's evolution, make it so.